everyone. So we have Matt, Esther from Olabot, and Daniel from Dexter. Hello. So we wanted to start off the day with a high-level conversation about bots and sort of make sure everybody has a baseline understanding of what we're talking about all day. So I guess to start off, since this is the Bots for Dummies talk, Matt, what do you think are some misconceptions or false assumptions around bots?
I think there are many. I think one of the basic ones is what it means to be a bot. I think some people think about scripting bots. They use a git push, and that's in a way a bot. Other people think about artificial intelligent conversations, and they either do or don't include humans on the other side. So I think for us, all of those things are products that live inside of the chat interface, and we're sort of using bots as a shorthand to refer to all of them.
So Daniel's helping people build bots for businesses, whereas Esther is focusing more on personal bots. So I want to draw the distinction between the two. Daniel, how do you think that people are building bot-based businesses, and why do you think it's such an opportunity?
Yeah, so a few patterns have kind of emerged in the bot ecosystem out of some things we've noticed. Basically, the average person downloads 0 new apps to their phone every week. And the majority of consumers are spending all their time in messenger apps. So that's, I guess, surpassed social network usage. So naturally, businesses are looking for ways to find access to those customers in the apps that they're using. And Messenger, Facebook Messenger, and in Slack are a big part of that. So businesses, both we're seeing a lot of interest from content publishers, as well as other more utilitarian style businesses, transactional oriented businesses, are looking to messaging for those kind of opportunities.
So now, Esther, on the personal bot side, how do you think a bot can better represent a person rather than a regular social network?
Yeah, if you think of like a regular social network, you have what is basically a static profile. Everybody sees the same profile experience. You land there, and it doesn't really matter who you are, the intent you have. You all see the same thing. Probably LinkedIn is a great example of that. It's just like, here's a wall of text about this person. But actually, we're a lot more dynamic than that, and we have lots of different services that we use to put in this interesting data. And wouldn't it be awesome if you could actually cross-search across all those different services and pull something that's relevant and useful about that person. And so I think that's one of the big opportunities in the personal bot space, is to be able to ask a question like a human to another human and have them actually be able to respond with relevant information immediately. Great.
And so I would love to hear from all of you. First, which bots do you find yourself using every day or most frequently? And what platforms do they exist on?
I mean, the one that I always use is the Giphy bot, which just like in Slack, you want to connote some emotion, and you're going to go to Giphy to get a random GIF around an image. So that's definitely top of my list. I'm also finding myself using Quartz a bunch for content, because it lets me, as opposed to me skimming a headline, it kind of gives me the top level headline for a certain news story, and then I can dive deeper as I need to or want to. I think I forgot the second part of your question.
Yeah. Do you consider Quartz a bot, Daniel?
Yeah. Why wouldn't?
Because it's an app where there's then sort of an interface inside of it, but then there's buttons. I'm just curious.
So I think there's a natural progression to Quartz where they're going to be on Facebook Messenger over time. I think they saw a usage pattern that just made sense for them. And Facebook and the platforms maybe weren't there yet. It didn't have the adoption or discovery there. But from like a meta standpoint, right? It has that bot feeling to it, and I think we can kind of treat it that way. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I've been playing around with a lot of like quiz-oriented bots lately. One called Swelly, where you can actually post multiple pictures and have other people around the world vote on them. So I see particularly like younger kids doing this, like 13-year-old girls are trying to decide like what profile picture to use, or maybe like what picture to post on Instagram, because they've created a bunch. They just like snapped a bunch of photos. Which one is the best one? And that's been kind of fun to just like play with and see how people use it.
And where do most of those quizzes live? Are they in Messenger, Telegram?
Yeah, so this one is in Messenger. Yeah.
So I'll pick two that I use every day, which are Poncho and where we built that at BetaWorks, and Digit, which I found as a consumer. And
I love Digit too.
right, the thing that both of those have in common that I really like is that they do one push a day that's super useful. It's like not annoying. It's just giving me an update on my balance. It gives me an update on my weather once a day, and then it just waits for me to pull more information from it. So sometime once a week, once every 2 weeks, I'll ask Digit a specific question. Give me my last 3 recent transactions. I can just type recent and it'll respond right away. And it's actually faster than logging into my banking app. Poncho, I kind of do the same thing where it sends me the forecast, and then sometimes I am curious about the 5-hour forecast, so I'll tap that.
So going back to your Digit example, Digit has used a bot to get people to move into their app, it seems like. What do you think makes the bot experience different from the app experience, and what is unique about each of the bot platforms?
So I actually haven't downloaded the Digit bot, the Digit app. I only interact with it on text message, and that's all that I use it for. I know that it has this other set of features, like it helps you save money, which I do let it do, but that's not why I'm there. And so I actually don't know the difference between the Digit chat experience and the app experience, which in a way is kind of telling.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a chat-based app, so it's really similar.
So Esther, which features do you wish existed? You're building personal bots on several different platforms. Which features do you wish existed on certain platforms that don't?
I think the biggest feature request from Facebook Messenger right now is being able to pass parameters. That feels so important. We want to be able to share content, and you'd be able to jump right into the right spot in the bot. And right now that's not possible, but we know it's coming soon. So that's probably my biggest feature request on a platform right now.
And Daniel, given that you're helping different businesses build bots on a variety of platforms, what do you think are the specific verticals that will or won't work? And what are the products that work best in a chat interface?
Yeah, so I think this is a factor of time, really. Right now, the things that work best are in content and publishing, just because the expected experience from a user when you're not doing something like super transactional or utilitarian is like, I'm just having fun. And it's okay if something goes wrong, and I can have fun trying to test the limits of the bot, find the edges of the sandbox. So certainly, those applications do the best because they don't evoke frustration from the end user. Though we're seeing that as the platforms release more functionality and the builders can use that functionality to their advantage, we're seeing more utilitarian style approaches in customer service and e-commerce. So Facebook just launched payments, and customer service and chat has been around for a while. And so we're seeing products around like adapting frequently asked questions pages to chat, and just doing basic payment transactions.
When you say testing the edges of the sandbox, what do you mean?
So the first thing everyone, I actually heard Robert Hoffner, who is the founder of Smart Child, say this, so I'm not going to take credit for it. But he says like the first thing everyone tries to do with a bot is sleep with it. And so that's kind of like that's sort of one piece. The other thing that everyone tries to do with a bot is curse at it. And so it's important that bot builders sort of build for this kind of line of thinking. Poncho actually puts you in a corner and gives you timeout if you curse at it, and it like just won't answer your questions until you say sorry or after some period of time. Everyone's sort of skeptical, and they try to break things. I mean, every good like product person does that, so it's just natural, and even more apparent here.
And Esther, how do you guys handle that when people try to ask your bot things that it doesn't necessarily know?
Yeah, so the way we're handling that is if it feels like an appropriate question, we actually pass that on to the bot owner. So you ask a question, we don't have an answer in our database, we then send it on to the bot owner, and they can optionally reply, and then that enables sort of like an instantaneous result or a near instantaneous result, and it also trains the person's bot in the meantime. So that's kind of a way of having a human agent be able to take control when needed. But otherwise, hopefully we have the result for you.
Great. So I'd like to hear from all of you. Matt talked about it earlier in his presentation about how important is AI, and is it fundamental to the usability or functionality of a bot? So where do you all fall on that?
Me to start. So my personal opinion on this is that we're not there yet. AI NLP isn't mature enough. There are some interesting applications, and if your domain, if the sort of realm, whether it's weather or movies, if that's confined enough, you can build pretty good NLP or AI around it. But if you're in a more broader domain, like Pancho will talk to you about almost anything, it gets to be really, really hard to figure out what a human is trying to say, and there are a lot of intricacies there. So what we found is the best way to sort of approach bot building is through discrete processes guided by buttons or other UI elements, and then just giving some generic response around like not understanding the user, and then offering them options out of that misunderstanding. I do believe that we're making, I mean, we just saw Google acquire API.ai, and obviously Facebook has Wit.ai. So I think we're making a lot of progress, and it'll be there. And it's important for the bot building platforms to be ready for when those are more mature. And we're working towards that. But from a practical standpoint, right now, it's just not mature enough.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also having talked to the Facebook Messenger team pretty extensively, they also have the same line of thinking. And one of the reasons why structured messages are used by most bots is just because you have to put these like guardrails on people so that they have a great experience and they actually are able to have the responses to the intents that they have. And you really need to give them some buttons and UI elements to make that happen.
It seems to me like there's almost two broad categories of chat programs, I'll call them. One of them is something we are trying to access a specific set of data, and so actually tapping your whole question out is less efficient than tapping a button, and so having that UI element makes a ton of sense. We've also seen companies or products where people they're keyword based. So there was a bot, I remember, I think it was a Trump bot where people ask a question like, what do you think about building a wall? And then it's just like, what did you think about the wall? And then the question is just like, wall, right? It turns out that it's just, you can find those keywords and pierce them. But I think there's this other category of company or product that is fundamental, like the whole software is this conversation back and forth. And so you'll hear from a couple of those kinds of companies today. And I think in those categories, natural language becomes really important. And often, and as I said earlier, those companies have opted to build their own. So whether that's a product that it's really a product that only exists as a function of the conversation. Like that's the question and answer is the whole thing.
Some are interesting too. Like your answer reminded me of Purple, which is a bot that I use a lot. And they have keywords in order to. So Purple is sort of like a daily news bot that tells you about what's going on in the news. And they have these keywords. But in the past, they asked you to like type them out, and now they're just using buttons. But you can also have like conversations with other people who are also talking to the bot, and so then that becomes kind of like a back and forth conversation. So kind of an interesting mix.
The hybrid is cool.
And where do each of you stand in the human versus non-human powered bot debate? So some people claim that you should use a human to sort of augment the bot experience. Some people argue that you should use a human to train the bot and make it better over time. And some people are just pure tech first. And I think that the vast majority of the bot camp companies have opted for the non-human route.
So in the B2B space especially, you have to put humans behind like a customer service machine, right? So if you think about like phone trees back in the day, you always just dialed 0 to get to an agent. I think bots are going to work like that in that sphere forever. But they can service questions that are common questions, and they can also offer tools to this customer service representative that sort of enhances the next person's. It's kind of this virtuous cycle of learning for the customer service bot as well. So we're, from the B2B standpoint, we're betting heavily that humans will back a lot of these in content and I assume in consumer. I think that we're seeing more. There just aren't resources to manage it. There isn't enough humans back there. But they'll monitor the bot's progress and jump in when necessary.
I totally disagree about the customer service IVR systems bots are just sort of IVR systems that live in Messenger, because the thing that you can't do in an IVR system is tell it what you want. It's almost like taking a deep link into that fifth that one place in this complex tree that you actually want to go. Like, you know where you want to go. It's just that you have to wait for 7 descriptions of potential tree paths, and then you have to say 7, then 5, and then say your last name and type your social security number in. I think one of the advantages of doing this through Messenger is that we can listen to what people are actually asking for. So if there's 10 different ways that people ask for a specific type of customer service, I want to cancel my service and can get sort of directly deeply into that tree, then we can learn from that and make the service better. I don't think it's instant. I don't think we're there today, but I do think that's the...
I agree with you disagreeing with me. I don't think they're the same thing. I think all the advantages you pointed out are totally accurate. There will always be a customer that hits the edge of the sandbox, and you will always have to route them to a human, like somehow. And if you start servicing customers with just automation, I think you're going to stop servicing customers, not because your automation is handling everything.
Esther, any opinion on that?
So on the consumer side, we think a lot about scaling yourself, and that's part of the like promise of a bot, really, is that a bot can have a lot more conversations than you can. And so all of what we're doing is automated, except for in those edge cases where we're sending a message to someone. Or if someone is really specifically wanting to send a message directly, like a direct message. But we think you should be able to just get a response quickly.
I think there's a place for both. Just like in software now on the web, there's a place for both. There are certain products that are fundamentally pieces of software, and there are certain products that are fundamentally about connecting you with other human beings. I think the part of the reason you see that the bot camp companies are in that software category is because at BetaWorks, one of the things that we think is most interesting is the software category. And that's not to say that there's a bunch of really interesting use cases about scaling individuals. You see it with companies like Talkspace, where one psychiatrist could talk to a whole bunch of people. I'm sure they're going to be financial services where one person just talks to a whole bunch of people at scale because it's inside of Messenger. And that's a totally valid way of communicating. It's almost, I kind of think about it like Snapchat. You're communicating in a way that's one to many, but it feels like one to one each time. But I do think there are two separate kinds of software.
And so, Matt, you've talked a lot about Messenger, but we have a bunch of companies building on a whole bunch of platforms. And so other than the consumer versus enterprise delineation, why do you think some people are choosing certain platforms over others?
So we talked about it a little bit here. There's some of it is demographic. I think that if you're building a product for the workplace, there are a bunch of products that have a lot of traction in the workplace. If you're building a product, I just saw a statistic that said that on Kick Messenger, for example, 50% of the users are under 24. So if you're building a product for teams, it might make sense to start there. So I do think there's the demographic piece of it. And then there's the feature set. So some of it I talked about earlier about discovery, which definitely matters. But also, and I'd be curious for your thoughts on this, because I think you've looked at a lot of different platforms. It seems like the individual UI elements need to sort of sync up with what you're trying to let people do.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it comes down to like, who's your audience? Because the different platforms have very different audiences. And then what are you trying to accomplish? So if like the social graph is really important, you might start on Kick, because Messenger isn't quite there yet with the social graph, but they're close. Like, it's clear that it's coming. Yeah, I would say it's demographics and feature sets.
Great. So I think we should wrap up so that we stay on time. But that was great. Thank you to Matt, Esther, and Daniel.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks, Anna.